Welcome to this presentation of different areas in the cloud ecosystem. This presentation is intended to demystify the whole cloud range of companies. So there are many different kind of cloud companies, and we seek to demystify what those cloud companies are, what is their focus area, and what is the value add they do. So let's jump in. And to give you a frame to think on, data is the key. So data is the oil which drives the economic engine. Now, let's step back and see how it was organized previously. And here I would take you through the earlier era when there was less of communication and less of having data on the cloud, or it was basically data on your premise. So that is what it was. So companies installed mainframes and so on, and they had communication links and so on, dedicated communication links. But basically it was data which was handled at location. And all the gray boxes means the data was handled by that company owning the data or owning it on premise. And then we come to blue boxes where you see the virtualization, servers, storage, and networking. And the blue boxes means someone else is handling it on behalf of you because they do it more efficiently. So that was most of the services run by IBM and all the big companies, CSC, HP, and so on. And it was virtualization, server, storage, networking, and so on. And as you went along, you had more and more things being run by these outsourcing companies. So the runtime up to the lower level networking was run by these companies. And then you could see different names given to them: platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, similarly software as a service like Salesforce and so on, where you just ran the business process of Salesforce and you had your data of consumers and so on. And then you had the data as a business process as a service, where you were only concerned with data and nothing else. And then you also have data as a service, but this is more of what is the weather and what is the exchange rate and what is the stock market price and so on. But this basically means if you don't own data, you don't own a business. So I hope this gives you a perspective on how it was done earlier. Now, what happened is there was this whole internet boom, connectivity, telecom, networking, and so on. And data speeds and cost went down, which has resulted in easy accessibility of data over the internet. So you had on-premise thing, and because of connectivity, you could have your data at remote locations. And this gave rise to security of data and access control. So this was the second thing. When you put data in a remote location, you needed to be sure that it was only you who accessed the data and you had control over your data. So this has been supplemented by innovation in devices and IoT devices and so on. And lower cost for these devices has the same drivers and they have the same issues as the earlier one where you had your data online. And that was basically the security of data and access control. So you had all these different kind of things being connected. And because of these developments, you had big companies like Amazon, Google, Azure going headlong into the cloud and driving down the cost and ease of accessibility. Driving down the cost of storage and ease of accessibility drove adoption, and this resulted in special companies in the ecosystem. So let's look at the different companies in the cloud ecosystem. Excuse me. So you had these companies which gave you data access and you could store it on the cloud. And these were mainly focused on price and scale, and it was public cloud. Then came the concerns about security and so on. And also you required low latency for certain applications for which certain cloud services didn't work. So you had companies like Interaction, Equinix, and so on coming in, and they basically drove to address these issues of security and latency and networking. Then you had companies, because of this complexity of the public cloud. So some companies charged you for nothing for storing data, but they charge you for reading data. So you had a lot of different business models which these companies introduced. Companies like Amazon, Google, Azure, and so on. So to make it simple, you had companies which managed the complexity and ran operations. So you had a host of companies to manage this complexity. Companies like DigitalOcean, NetRapid, Mirantis, Ansible, Proxmox, etc. And some of their areas coincided in adjacent areas. So let us call them decomplexing cloud companies. Each claim to make it simple and manage your price, connectivity, security, and operational management concerns. So these are not, they don't provide physical servers, but they provide management of that server and on the complexity. And then there were niche monitoring companies like Datadog and so on. And these companies provided just monitoring of your operational efficiency and costs. Now let's move on. So you had these physical cost, public cloud. So physical cost, we mean something which actually had servers, something which had physical things running. And these were the cloud companies like AWS and so on. And they focused on lowest cost option. Then you had private cloud companies focusing on security, low latency, networking, and so on. Then you had companies which manage complexity and run operation kind of companies. And then you had niche monitor operation and cost companies like Datadog. Well, now that you have the cloud infrastructure, let's see what's more. Once you have this infrastructure to manage your business, let's consider for a moment what new kind of companies are coming here. And these offer new data services. And these are either companies which are existing or edge companies making IoT products and offering these services. Number of devices have connectivity, and basically they have data which can be accessed, shared, and so on. So these would be the on the edge IoT companies, and they would have different applications like outdoor or a vertical like agriculture, managing your farm equipment, or industry applications, or public services, or logistics, or general services. But let's not forget the old ones like the government or public sector and office and industry, which already existed. So all these segments also produce data, and these have existed for a long time. So now that you have data, so now what happened was, first was you could put data in the cloud. Then you had a efficient mechanism to put that data and manage that data and manage the cost of it, because of which more data has come in. And now you need to manage the data. So there are companies like Elastic, Databricks, Snowflake, which address this and help organize data. So they could do it by containers and Kubernetes. So these are new management kind of things of data. So we go back to the data warehouse concept, where you had the data warehouse organized concept versus the data lake dump concept. And data lake dump concept means you just take data and you just put it in a data lake, and then you figure out what you do further. And the difference between data lake and data warehouse is that data warehouse is organized data. It's in a schema. Whereas in data dump, you just have a data dump. And what you do is you run an extract, transform, and load process called ETL process to transform data from the data lake to data warehouse quality, where you can make sense of data. So you have a lot of these companies which are there. And then you have this managed data companies which are there, which we talked about. So now there are two more things which have come in, which were on the edge out IoT companies and managed data companies. So these are two new things. Let's look further. So you had this, which we have seen till now. Now you have data, and now you need to analyze data and find patterns and generate knowledge from that data. Call it machine learning or data mining companies, or analyze data pattern kind of companies. So you have these new kind of companies come up here called analyze data companies, which have come up in addition to the ones we have already seen here. Now there is one offshoot called data and process companies, because once you have the data generally is used with a business process or a certain process. So since data and process go hand in hand, there could be AI or non-AI companies like eBuilder or Salesforce, which focus on business processes. Then you have a special kind of companies which focus only on automation. Companies like Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, IPsoft, and so on. So these focus on automation. But again, they have cloud data storage and they focus on automation. Finally, you come to another offshoot, which comes from the physical world of robotics, like ABB robots managing factory assembly lines, or driverless car automation, or mechatronic robots, or drones, or automated robo soldiers. So these correspond to physical automation and those kind of companies, but they are done from remote. So again, you have cloud coming in there. So what we have seen is there are different ways in which you use cloud and cloud infrastructure. And if you look at the driverless automation cars in the future, you'd have a lot of data coming in from these cars into how it would be managed, low latency communication, driverless cars, and so on. So those things will speed up this whole cloud ecosystem development. Now, we looked at 4 more options here. So you had first the physical cost public cloud companies. Then you had the private cloud. Then you had managed complexity companies. You had niche monitoring companies. You had on the edge IoT companies. You have managed data companies. You have analyzed data companies. And now after you have analyzed, you have business process companies, you have automation companies, and physical automation AI. So this more or less gives an overview of how many different kinds of focus areas there will be. But let's sum it up and let's take out the complexity and where is the focus of these companies. And we can briefly see the type of companies and the focus area. So let's look at the type of companies we visited and the focus areas. So the first was physical cost, public cloud, lowest cost option. Focus area is cost. You get data storage at low cost. That's it. Then you have this low latency private cloud security option, different networking options, and so on. And here the focus is security and latency. Then you have the managed complexity and run operations companies where you manage complexity. Then you have the niche monitor and operations and cost, which is more focus area is monitoring, understanding where your cost structure is, and so on. You have on the edge IoT companies, which is edge computing. You have managed data companies, which just manage data. putting data here from here to there and so on. Again, it is basically focused on low cost, but managed data companies gives you the framework to manage those. Then you have analyzed data companies, which analyze this data, finding out patterns and gaining knowledge from these. Then you have business process companies doing business processes. Then you have automation companies doing automation. Then you have physical automation companies, AI companies, which work in the physical world. So we have taken out the key focus areas around which these companies evolve, and because of which there's a revenue driver for these companies. Without offering this value, they wouldn't be in business. So sum it up in one word: what is the value add? And there are three questions to this. Do I require this? How easy is it to access? And finally, what value do I get out of this? So if there's a positive dimension to do I require this? Yes, I require this. How easy is it to access? It's very easy to access and set up. And finally, what value does it deliver? Yes, it delivers a lot of value. And if these three questions are answered, then I believe the cloud company will be in business. Thank you. And just email me if you have any questions. My email is given in the presentations. It's in the last slide of the presentation. I have the email, so you can just email me. Thanks.